welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast,
where our commitment is to bring the Lordship of Jesus Christ to life, and that includes every aspect of our lives, which makes this podcast incredibly relevant because just about anything we want to talk about, Jesus has something to say about it, and we're going to continue focusing on what his Lordship means to our daily lives as we begin looking at all the things that are going on in the world and trying to make some sense out of it. In fact, I just got a phone call from somebody today who was talking about the sermon series we're in right now called Me, and I encourage people to tune into that because we're talking about a lot of issues that folks are dealing with. We've been talking about expressive individualism and the kind of the radical sexualization of our culture. And that, ideas have consequences. We preach that in this podcast, and bad ideas have bad consequences. And the man who called me this morning has a sister who came out of a lot of brokenness and abusive background and is now exploring a transgender lifestyle as a man. And he was just thanking me for preaching the series that we're focusing on because these issues are real and they're all around us and they're largely the fruit of exactly what we've been talking about, in this book. So we thank you for tuning in. And if you know anybody that's dealing with these types of issues of sexuality and trying to find themselves in the crazy world that we live in today, make sure you tune in to lstones.org and go to the media page and you can watch our sermon series. I think we're on our 5th week this week, and it's been very, very helpful. A lot of good feedback from people, and I hope it's helpful for you. But we've got a lot of great stuff going on at Living Stones. We always like to start off this podcast just by letting you know what's happening so you can take advantage of it. And why don't we start with tomorrow night, Friday night.
Yeah, Friday night we have our worship night. It's going to be an exciting time. Our worship team's been working very hard on this. We got a few surprises.
And this is a highlight for our people. If you've ever been to Living Stones on Sunday morning, you know the challenges that we're facing right now. We've got 3 services, which means we have a very limited time and we're packing it as much as we can. And I think one of the things people love about Living Stones is the worship. That's what one of the things that we're known for. People love to experience the presence of the Lord, and our biggest frustration is we just don't have enough time to squeeze it all in on Sunday morning. So Friday night will give you a chance to just come and relax and worship, and we're gonna do nothing but sit at the feet of Jesus. It starts at 7:00, and that's going to be amazing. Yeah. So get here soon.
Absolutely.
Also, men's and women's encounters coming up. Why are these important, Pastor Andrew? I harp on it every week, but talk to some man out there who needs to go to the men's encounter.
Yeah, I mean, really, the men's encounter is a jump start into your walk with Christ. So many times we come to church, and we come to church regularly, and that's a good thing. We want that, but sometimes we don't get to the deeper hearts of our wounds, our hurts from the past, and we can dig out start the process of dealing with some of these issues. And you're surrounded by a great group of men of God who's been praying for you, who's there to minister to you, to love you, and kind of meet you where you're at. And that's really a great condition for that, great place for that.
You said something really profound. A lot of times we don't pause to really get down to the roots of some of the problems that we have, and so we come to church and maybe somebody prays with us, we give our life to the Lord, and then we're going to try to be this good Christian man, and we wonder why we're failing all the time, or feeling like we just aren't getting it, we're not getting free, and that's because we've never taken the time to really deal with the deeper issues. So I want to encourage the men. We always lag behind. The ladies' encounter is at a waiting point list once again. And that means we're talking about somewhere between 80 and 100 ladies that are planning on attending the women's encounter. Encourage you, don't let that stop you. If you're on a waiting list, please get on the waiting list because circumstances happen. If you're supposed to get in, you will. But I think the guys are up to maybe 50 men, something like that right now, which is a good number, but we'd love to see 80 to 100 men as well. So I encourage you, get online again and register for that men's encounter. And then right on the heels of the men's encounter coming up this October is the Band of Brothers event, which is our network men's event. All the churches from the network of related pastors will be coming, men from all over the United States, and we hope to just blow out the sanctuary this year and be in an overflow room situation. So we're really encouraging our guys, make this a priority. It is always a launch pad for our men into just a great fall and new year, as it's just something powerful about being together with that many men worshiping Jesus together. So it's a great thing. We're talking today about, again, our book that we've been in, which we encourage you to pick up a copy. It's called Brave New World.
Strange New World.
Strange New World. Brave New World. Yeah. Strange New World. A paperback book, a small paperback book that helps us navigate the craziness that we've been in. And we just ended talking about crazy. All of these theorists we've been talking about are crazy in their own right because of the radical ideas they introduced. But last week when we were together, we talked about Wilhelm Reich and kind of the merging of Marxism and Freud's idea of people as sexual beings. Talk a little about his major ideas just to bring us up to speed.
I mean, yeah, instead of an economic revolution to liberate the people, just found in kind of the root of Marxism, it's a sexual liberation of the people. What's repressive to people is not just it's part of it. It's not just the economic machines or the ruling economic class, but it's traditions and morals that's been imposed on us by traditional family, by religion, by customs, and all that needs to be destroyed because that's the oppressor, the patriarchy and whatnot. And once we're liberated from that, then we can be truly free, as defined by sexually free, sexual liberation.
Yep. So Freud said if you're mentally sick or you're neurotic or you need help, it's because you're not getting enough sex. That was basically his interpretation. And I think many have bought into that viewpoint today as we find ourselves in an America that is just radically sexualized. Even we talked about some of the strange behavior going on in our schools now where we're introducing just blatant sexual ideas and perverseness all the way down to kindergarten. And folks on the other side are looking at us like we're weird or something's wrong with us, but we're looking at it like, why are we talking about these types of sexual issues with children who that's not even on their radar?
I think it's also important for us to kind of refresh what the original thing, which is this radical individualism.
Yeah.
Whether expressive
individualism, yeah.
which basically says your most authentic self is your best self, which we got the idea from Rousseau. But your most authentic self comes from really how you feel.
Yep.
So there's a couple of different things in there. One is you somehow we define your best, the best life, the best for our culture, the best for our society is your quote authentic self defined by your feelings.
Sure.
So both of those things could be questioned, but you combine those two things, and it really lays a foundation for the landscape we see in America today.
Sure.
Right.
And so there you have it. Just be who you want to be, whatever you feel, and of course a lot of those feelings are sexual in nature. So express your sexuality, and anybody, any institution, any person who wants to put any limits on the authentic expression of who you are is now the villain.
Yep.
And so we find ourselves, I just posted an article today of a chaplain in Austin, Texas, chaplain for the fire department, who expressed his views outside of the office, just on his webpage or whatever, some of his views about some of the sexual insanity that we're seeing. And he was fired for that. So we're in a cancel culture. The worst sin you could commit is to speak against the sexual revolution in any way, shape, or form. And I believe, again, he's suing the city, and I believe he will win because it's an infringement upon his liberties and his freedom of speech.
Well, and that's a great example because when your authentic self is based on your feelings, you dive into the world of the Wild Wild West, which anything goes, right?
Yeah.
Because in this case, this chaplain was expressing his authentic self. But his authentic self, because everyone's based on feeling, there's no right or wrong. It's based on whoever's in power. Right. So since he was part of the, quote, the less power, I would say part of the majority, but less... But of the lesser power regime or whatever.
Sure. He
doesn't get to express.
Now the shoe's on the other foot, and so now he's the one that's he's being oppressed by the oppressors. Yeah. But of course that doesn't count because it only goes one way.
Right.
The new tolerance only goes one way, and you're going to embrace the sexual ethic of our day, or you're going to pay the price.
Yeah.
And we talked about that and really encourage believers. Now is a time to stand up. It's a time to to live your life without fear, to stand up for truth. And if we don't stand up now, who knows where all this is going.
Well, I would just say, look, but see, people don't understand really about the authentic self. People just take that argument and carry it down to whatever they want to say right now, because we as Christians can say, hey, we're expressing our authentic self, but our authentic self is actually based on the Scripture.
Right.
Who God's made us, He has given us a new nature. He's given us we're new creations.
Right.
So our authentic self is to obey what God's called us to do. We're not oppressed under anything. Yeah. We're expressing who Christ has made us to be.
And as long as we have a First Amendment enshrined in our Constitution, we're in a good place. As soon as we start throwing out the Constitution or reworking the Constitution, or we decide that freedom of speech is a bad thing, then we have reason for concern. But I think people like this that are standing up, especially I encourage everybody at Church Sunday to stand up and to be bold. We have a First Amendment on our side. It's very clear about freedom of religion and freedom of conscience, and so it's important that we use those rights while we have them. But let's talk about, the next chapter in the book dealt with the fact that, you look at somebody like Reich or Freud or Margaret Sanger or any of these folks that were promoting just a radical sexual freedom. Their views would not have ever been able to become mainstream without some societal preconditions, either in the terms of development of technology or other things that we're going to talk about today. In fact, we want to talk about 5 societal preconditions that really set the stage for some of this stuff to become mainstream. Because it moved it out of just the realm of pure ideology or philosophy, which is in one realm, but then you got real life. And for some of these ideas to take a foothold in culture, there needed to be some technological developments and other things that made their viewpoint even livable.
Yeah, in other words, you need the perfect storm.
Yeah. And
the perfect storm kind of happened because many of these thinkers in their days, their ideas were not taken seriously.
Right.
In their day.
Right.
But somehow the remnant of it carried throughout culture, and with the perfect storm, it ended up become popularized and basically become normalized in our culture.
So ideas need the help of the larger culture to really take root. And so we're going to talk about 5 of those things that happen, or societal preconditions or developments. The first one, talk about this a little bit, moving from a fixed world to a plastic one.
Even that term, what do you mean by plastic?
Well, yeah. But what we used to live, the author argues, we used to live in a world that was relatively fixed and stable, and so our identity was something. If we wanted to find our place in the world, we kind of just jumped right into what was more natural, I guess. In other words, like if you lived in a farming community, you probably never ventured too far out of that community. If your dad was a farmer, and you grew up taking care of the farm, then you're going to be a farmer. And the world was just simpler. It was more fixed and more stable. Where now they argue that the world is plastic. Well, what does that mean? How has the world become more plastic, malleable?
Malleable. I think that's a better way to say it. It just means that we're our current world today. I mean, even probably a couple starting 3 or 4 decades ago, is now so changeable and movable. And in many ways, it went from a fixed world in which shapes you to a plastic world in which you shape the world.
Sure. And so some of that, we talk about technological developments or whatever. One is the fact that we're just more mobile. Almost everybody today can afford an airplane, at least Americans, can afford an airplane ticket, and you can travel somewhere. We go all over the world on mission trips and things like that. In the past, if you were a missionary, you bought a one-way ticket and you got on a boat and you hoped that you survived the trip to wherever you're going, and you were not coming back home because it was just too hard, too costly. Nowadays, travel's less expensive. We're able to move more. We're able to see the world more. We just have simply more options. Yeah. We have more choices, and that's a good thing on the one hand. But on the other hand, it's a bad thing as it relates to forming our identity, because sometimes more choices means more confusion. And sometimes people get paralyzed by the sheer number of choices that they have.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine before cars. You didn't really go anywhere.
Right.
I mean, I'm not even talking about
you're going to probably marry somebody from your neighborhood.
From your neighborhood.
Or things like that. Now we have dating services that go global. You can marry somebody in another country that you've never met before.
Yeah, and even expose your ideas. You can get media from anywhere in the world. back then you maybe get the local newspaper,
Sure,
and that's all you hear.
And you were always facing certain diseases that, whether it was polio or other things that had ability to shape your life or destroy your life. Of course, now with scientific development, we're living longer. We have more choices. We have more wealth. We have more economic freedom to do things with the money that we have. And again, we said these are good things on the one hand, but as it relates to the self, it creates this false image that basically I don't have to fit into the world. I have the ability to create the world.
Yeah.
Whereas before I wanted to go, okay, where is my place in the world? Help me find my place in the world. Now it's like, no, the world is at my fingertips, at least the illusion.
Right.
I control the world. I control my choices. I can shape the world to be what I want it to be.
And I was talking to you about this earlier. This itself, by itself, is not necessarily a negative thing, I mean, it can become negative. It can become, we can start deifying ourselves or create idols, obviously. But there is a degree of the Lord said to us, like, take over
cultural dominion.
Yeah, cultural dominion, take over the world, and be fruitful, multiply, and mold the world, shape the world, and create. There's a degree of godliness to that. But this in itself was a precondition to all our mental change, right?
Right. Second thing.
Well, I would say without God in this context, if you take God out of this equation, then we become our own God. And that's kind of what that means.
Another example he talked about, which I thought was really good, was just take the area of music. So now we have technology.
Yeah.
We used to, if you wanted to enjoy music before, it was a public thing.
It's a communal thing,
You had to go to the choir concert, what's the word I'm looking for? The orchestra, whatever. Now we have all these young people walking around with headphones on, listening to their own personal song list that they've downloaded, created at whenever they want it. And so it's not unusual, like you see a baseball team or something traveling, everybody's walking together in a group, but nobody is experiencing community. They're all in their own private world, listening to whatever they want to listen to. And it's just, again, not that that's necessarily bad, but it feeds into that radical, expressive individualism.
Yeah, he was even talking before orchestras or concert. It was just like a tribe getting together, and then you play music for other people to enjoy. Like, there's no point in playing music for yourself. It was kind of so other people can hear you, other people can enjoy. And music by nature is communal, and traditional in the very beginning, right? But now it's become very individualized.
Yeah, very individualized. Yeah. So the second thing he talks about, this is a huge one, is the collapse of traditional authority. We've seen the locus of authority move from outside sources to inner feelings, to self. I'm my authority. What I feel is my authority. There used to be major institutions that helped shape who we were. The first one is the church. And he talks about the fracturing of the church and how, for instance, if you grew up, 500 years ago, you had a church in your community, right? It was probably the Catholic Church, and that's where everybody went because there was only one church, not one Christian church. Now we have a smorgasbord of denominations. Again, that's not either good nor bad. There's a reason for that. But the point is, there's more choices again.
He was talking about Martin Luther create competition for the Catholic Church.
Exactly.
I was like, wow, that's an interesting way to put it. I've never seen it that way before.
Now there's McDonald's and Burger King.
I was like,
which one are you going to go?
So again, we're not saying that's a bad thing, but what that did is it created a collapse of
now there's a splintering in authority, which only gets splintered more. And then you deal with the cultural despisers of religion who are constantly attacking the church, attacking people as hypocrites, presenting the ideas of the church as implausible or idiotic.
Unscientific.
Unscientific. And so there's just this constant attack on the church as a basis for authority in our culture today. And we don't help ourselves, right? When there's wickedness in the church, when pastors are falling, moral failures, financial failures. I mean, we're not helping ourselves when...
I will say one thing, though. The hypocrisies of the church is pulling the headlines to everyone see. But when there's hypocrisy in the church of scientism, when there's when there's hypocrisy in this, we want socialism for everyone, but I'm going to buy my $1 billion mansion. It's just this we all fallen people, and I think that's so. I'm just kind of pushing back a little bit on that.
No, I get it. It's magnified. It's magnified because we are supposed to be the ones who hold up the standard of righteousness. And when there's scandalous behavior inside the church, I get it. But the problem is too, there's scandalous behavior
because
inside
right now,
every organization.
and now the new moral arbiters of our culture are having their own scandals, and they're being called out too. So it's just interesting how that shifts. And again, the encouragement for us as a church is to be authentic, is to admit that we fail, and when we make mistakes, to be like, yeah, we own up to it.
I think you're talking about, like, what about the Epstein scandals? What about all the people that went on that? We still haven't heard any exposure of any of those folks. So,
exactly.
So it's selective, but the point is still well taken. There's been an absolute assault on these traditional sources of authority, the church being one. Let's talk a little bit about the traditional nuclear family, because some of the folks we've talked about in recent episodes hated the nuclear family, attacked the nuclear family, and saw that as a major problem. So once again, we've had these cultural despisers who are going after the family and basically trying to portray it as a place of oppression and dysfunction.
Well, I think one of the great examples he shared, and you guys are all aware of, is, even if you watch TV shows, there's rarely any shows or movies that has a strong father figure. Okay, most of these fathers, healthy marriage. Most of these father figures are just doofus, they're just goofballs.
Yeah. They're objects of people's laughter.
Yeah, they're kids themselves, they're immature kids who just, or they're abusive or whatever it is, and why do they, we all, study has shown the strong family unit, having a strong father, a healthy marriage, it makes a society better, makes the kids better. But why is there such a push against that portrayal in media? Because of this issue.
And I always like to point out Hollywood, when's the last time you saw a movie, a romantic, movie, where the romance centered on a husband and wife having a great relationship? Usually it's some illicit affair, one night stand, whatever. But where is marital happiness ever portrayed, or marital romance portrayed in a way where people go, I want to be married so I can have a great relationship like that. You never see it, and yet there are those relationships out there all over America and the world, but you don't see it. So there's an attack on the family, there's an attack on the church, and the third one, and this is huge, we saw this especially in the last couple of years, there has been an attack on our nation. You used to find your identity in saying, hey, I'm an American, and I'm a proud American, or wherever country you came from. And there was almost a national script, there was a patriotism that people ascribed to, even song, I'm proud to be an American, But all of that kind of national fire in our hearts has been watered down, whereas now our nation is attacked, the founding of our nation is attacked, the founders themselves are attacked, and there's just a lot of vitriol and poison being poured out in America as it relates to our national script, like our national narrative that we used to the heroes we used to hold in common, and those types of things.
I'll give you one example for that. The word patriotism is sometimes seen as a bad word, or is used to make fun of people.
Yeah, the FBI and some of these areas get memos, and patriot is a code word now that's used for extremism
or nationalistic. I remember years ago I was overseas doing missions, and there was a young lady, a Canadian young lady, and we were talking about whatever issue, and she was just like, why is patriotism important? Why do you want to be patriotic to your own nation? And she made that comment. I was just like, wow. And I couldn't quite answer her because, to me, I never even questioned it.
Yeah, it was just something that was a part of your guts.
Part of who, your God put you with a certain group of people, and there's a degree of loyalty to what God's given you, and you want to protect those around you. You want to protect your family,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is your team. It's like a sense of loyalty to your team.
I find it interesting now, even a lot of the Christian magazines in the evangelical world are coming out warning against Christian nationalism. Yeah. Almost like it's a bad thing. Like loving Jesus and loving your country are bad. Like you can't do both. And I understand the extreme of that. But in general, Christian people used to be the greatest patriots because we loved not only God, but we loved our country. And we're committed to both.
Right.
But anymore, that becomes a suspect term. And so, again, it's an attack on our nation, our national identity. And a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. So if you have a nation, this is why the biggest argument against critical race theory is, why are we teaching our kids to hate their country and to hate other people? How in the world can a nation survive if you don't love the nation that you're a part of?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just insane. But that's where we're at today. So this attack on traditional authority. Third area.
Well, let me just say real quick, and this one's huge because we used to find a large degree of our identity in those three things: in your family,
yep,
in your
church,
religion, your church, your religious community, and in your nation.
Yeah.
Tradition, that's where we find our identity. So you just stripped away three major areas of where we place our identity.
Yeah.
Okay. Three major, I'm going to say, unifiers. So now what's going to fill the vacuum?
Yeah.
So
that's a good word, unifiers. We're basically a Christian nation who believed in God and honored the Bible. We had a love for family and an honor for mothers and fathers and grandparents, etc.
Yeah.
And we had a love for, what's the first one we talked about?
Church, nation, and family.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, those were unifiers because that was a common script we had. When you throw away those three areas, we're like fluid. We're flying in midair. We're in the plastic culture again. A smorgasbord of ideas.
And I'm going to go a little conspiracy theories on you real quick, but when you look at a large picture, when you do that for not just the United States, but for every nation and every people group in the world, what do you have? You create a globalistic Now, in many ways, it emulates the kingdom of God because kingdom of God is the ultimate unifier and it's really the transcendent force.
Right.
But in replacing of the kingdom of God, there's a dark kingdom, the globalist kingdom,
Sure.
the globalist mentality. So when you erode all these adhesive forces within the nation states, where their allegiance to? Their allegiance to Facebook, allegiance to whatever ideology expressed through social media. So now you create this ubiquitous force that's throughout all the world, really ruled by some elites, and that's a dark goal, man. But that's also an ingenious goal to retain power and authority.
As we said, it's a satanic goal because Satan is real and the demonic world is real, and it copies. It always tries to copy what is true. It never creates anything. And so Christ and his kingdom, which is going to become a global reality, is always counterfeited by the enemy.
Yeah.
And so it's not conspiracy theory. It is demonic powers working towards that utopian dream, which has been with us all the way back.
We've been talking about the
Tower of
utopia.
Babel.
Yeah, I mean, so exactly. It's Tower of Babel 2.0. So if you have eyes to see, so you roll these boundaries that's been placed to kind of keep the separation of power, who will become the powerful? It's the global elites. And that's
So it
exactly
should
what
not
they're doing.
surprise us that the attack on the nation, the attack on the family, and the attack on the church are all very intentional. I don't know if they're well orchestrated, if there's some big plot.
That's where the conspiracy comes in.
But Satan certainly knows what he's going after.
It fits the worldview. It fits what I see in the culture today. That's at least what I see. So
Yeah. All right, let's hit the last three here very quickly. Talk about the loss of the sacred order.
Yeah.
Cultures have traditionally justified their moral orders, which is a set of values that they organize themselves with or that they use to regulate what human behavior should be or shouldn't be, by appealing to something transcendent. So in other words, we would say, well, why is homosexuality wrong? Well, because the Bible, that's what I've been trying to do on Sunday is, here's what God says. Now, so let me ask you this question. Should this behavior be celebrated? And if God forbids it, then the answer, of course, is no. You shouldn't celebrate that behavior. I'm appealing to a transcendent moral order. I'm saying that God has spoken and that we need to follow what God says. Mm-hmm. If you throw out the transcendent moral agency or order, where do people find moral rights and wrongs from?
Well, I mean, we've been talking about this for many, many times. Basically, when you lose the transcendent, it becomes might means right. Whoever has the largest microphone, whoever has the most money, whoever has the biggest gun, wins that battle. And people need to understand how important it is to lose that transcendence. But here's the deal: is when you don't believe in God, you're not a Christian. that transcendence is so intimidating, because when you acknowledge the transcendent, you're almost acknowledging that there's accountability.
Sure.
So it comes with all kind of baggage if you acknowledge the transcendent, you know.
And think about this: we've rejected that for many generations now.
Yeah.
So when I'm up Sunday preaching about sexual expression being confined within the marriage covenant, I know when I'm saying that the larger culture, if they were sitting in our church service, would be laughing out loud. Like, you got to be kidding me. What a joke. Of course, that was the same culture that Paul was dealing with in Corinth. Yeah. That wasn't their values. It's not the values of most of the world. But that's what the Bible teaches. But, of course, that's been jettisoned a long time ago. And that view is mocked and ridiculed. That's why anything goes. And so we find ourselves again, how in the world could somebody like Reich and his ideas be accepted in mainstream society? Well, you can't accept it until you throw out the sacred moral order.
And the way I kind of ever talk to people about this is, well, okay, you don't believe my transcendent. What is your transcendent order? Because whatever you're speaking of, you might not think it, or you might not understand it, but deep in your heart, that's what you understood as.
Everybody has
as a transcendent order.
Some moral code that they're appealing to.
Yeah.
It's either transcendent or it's you or some other.
And by you speaking it, and you find enough value to impose it upon me or find me and fire me for it, you better believe is a transcendence to a certain degree, because how dare you impose it on me if it's just your personal opinion. Sure. And if you truly believe it's just your personal opinion, it really doesn't have any type of power authority to impose on other people, then you wouldn't even.
Yeah, you wouldn't open your mouth in the first place.
Exactly.
You know, and this is something when you throw out a transcendent moral standard, it creates a vacuum.
Yep.
And you heard the phrase, nature abhors a vacuum. Something's going to fill that vacuum.
Right.
And usually it results in tyranny.
Yeah.
People have this crazy idea, just live and let be, right? Whatever people want to be, just let them do it. But that doesn't work in reality. Some absolute power will fill that vacuum. And we've seen history repeat itself. It always ends up in tyranny and destruction.
Well, and that's what annoys me. It's not that you're arguing with me on the basis of this issue we're talking about. You're saying, hey, it's stupid for you to believe in God. God does not exist. By the way, I'm going to give you my God instead. And that's the bait and switch that just bothers me. It's like, you're not even arguing and saying what my God's saying that. You're saying there shouldn't be a God. Meanwhile, you're going to present to me your own God. It just...
Right. And the God becomes pragmatism in many areas, because what happens is you just do whatever works.
But even that becomes so confusing, because agenda overrides. I mean, as we've seen the whole COVID vaccine situation, whatever works isn't necessarily whatever works. It's whatever makes the most money, or whatever communicates the best wealth. End of the day, you say it was all about the science, all about pragmatism. Well, look at our culture today. How much of it is really about the science? How much is really about works? And so, I mean, just recently the CDC came out and made some crazy admissions about their treatment of COVID and the vaccine mandates and all these different things. It's like, why? And they even admit it. Why is it? Because they have internal issues. Because it isn't about what always works sometimes. Right. Because your judgment is clouded. Right. So pragmatism has its limits.
But you hear people say unpractical morals. Hey, bro, you might be witnessing and sharing Christ with me, and I might say to you, hey, whatever works for you.
Oh, right.
That's
works for
practical
you.
pragmatism, right? Just and when it comes to morals, whatever works for you.
Yeah.
But again, that doesn't work on the macro level. It doesn't last very long before it devolves into tyranny. Let's talk about the fourth big area: contraception, pornography, and sex in general. So here's Wilhelm Reich basically saying you need to express yourself sexually, however your inner desires, whatever those sexual desires are, express them. Well, there was kind of a problem back in his day, because if you expressed yourself sexually, as God has ordered things, a man and woman come together and have sex, you're probably going to produce a child.
Yep.
And that child would come with a lot of responsibility. And then it probably wouldn't bode well for you if you're running around impregnating everybody's sister, because the sisters have brothers and dads, and they would probably not appreciate that you're leaving this child without a father and without financial support. So you probably wouldn't live long if you acted that way. Right. So sex and procreation obviously go together, as they should, as God intended, which is why He created marriage. But contraception did something to sever sex and procreation. It basically said you could have sex and just enjoy the pleasure of sex without the unintended consequences of conception and having a kid to take care of.
Yeah.
And so again, none of these ideas would have worked if you were not somehow able to remove the unintended consequences of sex. Right. And so that was a massive societal development that really, for these folks, liberated sexuality from marriage and procreation and put it strictly in the realm of personal pleasure.
And then privatizing and mainstreaming pornography.
Sure.
Again,
so now we use technology again, because you used to have to go to the CD porn store to buy the magazine, and what if somebody saw you? Now you can just simply, in the privacy of your own home, with one click, you're looking at sexual images, and the stigma of it is no longer there. It's just another form of recreation for many people anyway. We made the comment, or they made the comment in the book that I thought was good, that it's pornography is about bodies, not faces.
Right.
In other words, we completely depersonalize it. It becomes just about my physical pleasure. And if it's about my physical pleasure, any body will do.
Right.
I don't need to know the body. I don't need to face the body. Just any body will work to make me feel good.
And it really is the actualization of what Freud advocated. What he's saying is it's a fulfillment of him, of what he says we need, or what his vision, his idealization of human happiness.
Exactly. But that wouldn't have happened without technology and without the creation of birth control and some of these other things. So,
internet and all that stuff, smartphones.
Let's go to the last one quickly in the time we have left. And he called it in the book the revolt of the elites. He says the traditional role of the elite, culture and society was the transmission of values from one generation to the next. So, for instance, the church, part of the church's role was to transmit faith and pass faith from one generation to the next. So, we're going to instill a healthy, living faith in the younger generation. The state. Actually, part of their job was to create patriotism. That we raised up people who were statesmen, people who were patriots, people who loved their country. Right. We talk about the family, creating a respect for moms and dads and grandma and grandpa and multiple generations. Right. Education. We believe that there was wisdom to be gleaned from the past, and that our job was to shape students to be good citizens, and that they didn't come born good citizens. They had to learn from great thinkers and great ideas from the past, from heroes and heroines from the past, and be shaped to be good students. So these were the roles, and there was a sense of obligation that you were taught. Like, if you're going to live in America, this is what it means to be a good American, or what I'm saying. There's an obligation, a responsibility placed upon us to be part of the larger community. All of this has changed to where all of these institutions now are actually working in almost in a mode of self-destruction. The direct opposite of what they were created to do is happening. And so we see this aggressive negativity toward the past and toward the past values and past beliefs. And one area we talked about was corporate America. I mean, corporate America used to be known as conservative. Conservative values, family values, capital, free market capitalism. Man, that is gone. Corporate America now is attacking the family, attacking traditional beliefs, attacking traditional sexual codes and standards, and funding all kinds of this, radical individualism, expressive individualism that goes against the church, against the family, against the state, and it's just been a massive global transformation. Yep. Those who used to be our friends are now actively working to destroy us. If you're holding a traditional Christian worldview, how do we explain this? He didn't go into too much, as we talked about. He didn't go into too much explanation in the book.
He did talk about the Indiana Religious Freedom Restoration Act.
He did. And just to reverse, because we were on the cutting edge of that.
Yeah, I remember that.
That RFRA bill was passed to protect Christian business owners' rights to be able to bring their faith and to express their faith through their business. And of course, it was colliding with the LGBT movement and ideology, and we can understand why. But we passed this amazing bill, and then what happened was this onslaught. It was a national onslaught of corporate America, the media, and what I call the LGBT mafia, because those are the ones driving the agenda. And they just started going after our governor, going after our state. We were backwards, we were stupid, we were Neanderthals, we were bigots. And then corporate America basically said, if you don't go along with our agenda and reverse this bill, we're going to leave and we're going to cause economic hardship, right? We're gonna destroy you economically. There are all kinds of threats about lost business, and by the way, we just saw it again. I want to point out to our listeners, this is all a bunch of baloney, because when you stand for righteousness, your nation is blessed, and all these corporate entities are not leaving the state because we stood for righteousness. But these are all vague and veiled threats. But the point is, why? Mm-hmm. This was just people trying to say we should have the right to live out our beliefs. But there's been a radical, progressive leftist agenda that has been embraced by corporate America. Yeah. Even now, the state chambers of commerce are not our friends anymore. They are pushing again. They're the ones that are behind, sex transitioning, gender transitioning behavior, the hospitals. It's crazy. So I guess just to summarize, these are all massive preconditions for this ideological perspective to actually find traction. And so we need to be aware of these things.
I think specifically, you talk about elites, you talk about business elites. Now, a lot of this, these tech giants from California, not much I can say about that, but I think a lot of these corporate elites, again, that's a passion of my heart, because corporation has really went from, when I saw the RIFA in Indiana, it really hit me hard, because I generally thought a lot of these businesses were supportive of conservative causes. Yep. But that was like a rude awakening, and since then it's been cascading just crazy.
Well, look at Pride Month. I mean, every major corporation has to bow, and they have to somewhere in their store display a banner or say that they're on board.
And I've been wondering what's the reason behind that, and partially because I was naive. But I think one big issue is where they're hiring from is from higher institutions that has been just pushing really the agenda. They're the prophets for these values and agenda. So
yeah, you bring up a good point. That is the new priesthood.
Right.
Of orthodoxy.
It's a seminary for it's Harvard's, Yale, your MIT's. That's the seminary for all these different ideologies. But I think the second issue is, again, you and I talked about a little bit, is it's because the corporate America has become so utilitarian in terms of money. Money is the end goal, and this is their way of attracting whatever that coveted crowd from 18 to whatever 45 age range, and that's what they think will draw the most financial success. They're bought into this whole utopian idea of the escalator myth, and this is inevitable. You want to be a right side of history, and they buy into that idea. And this is why it's so important for kingdom business to recognize the goal for kingdom business is not profit, it's people. And how do you develop people the best?
And I see the wisdom of Jesus when he said you cannot serve God and mammon. Yeah. At the end of the day, if you're not living for a transcendent Savior, Jesus Christ the Lord, you're going to sell out to something that is in the here and now. And for most people, it's money and all that money can buy. So you see a corporate selling out of values of righteousness, and then you get a crony capitalism. You get a very selfish,
big allegiance between crony capitalism, big government, and big media.
Yep.
And then guess what happened? The people rebel, and then now people are like, oh, that's what happened in Marxism, and that's what it's the history is just kind of keep repeating itself, And the only solution to this is kingdom. We're not saying we want socialism, we want capitalism, but capitalism under the banner of kingdom, so people focus on people.
Prosperity with a
purpose. Absolutely.
Amen.
And that's the real solution to this stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, I feel like these are some good things everybody can recognize that are happening around us, and we need to be aware of these things. And as you said, the solution is promoting a kingdom worldview,
Yep.
the gospel of the kingdom, which touches every aspect of life, and that's what a biblical worldview has to offer. So, and that's why we're doing this podcast. So, thanks for tuning in. Until we see you again next Thursday, we love to hear your comments, love your feedback, and we so appreciate it when you share this with as many of your friends as possible. Again, thank you for the privilege of sharing this time with you. Have a great week.